It's the end of the world as we know it, and Pecco Bagania does not feel fine. Welcome back to Motorsport 101. Well. Welcome to episode 594 of Motorsport 101, and officially the beginning of a new era of MotoGP. Because apparently, this sport is officially now under new ownership. As you do. A big transcendent story in the world of bike racing. It's been, over a calendar year since this was first announced, but finally it has been ironed out. The I's are dotted, the T's are crossed. Ducati have got a new special livery again.
Oh my goodness. I thought you were going to talk about something else, but can I just say it doesn't look good.
Oh.
Okay.
It's no blue Mugello livery like last year.
No.
They had a good idea in concept, but the execution just I don't know, man.
Sponsors are a bit too intrusive for me, and the font probably wasn't bright enough. The actual color of the maroon was really nice. It looked great on track.
Yes.
But it's more annoying that they were nearly there on that, rather than the fact that it was a complete washout. It was like a solid 7 out of 10 here. It's like you were so close. You were so close. Anyway, I'm Dre Harrison. Glad you could join us as ever to talk about the small and important matter of Formula One and MotoGP having the same owners for the first time ever. Oh, that happens? Oh, shit. We got to talk about that. Joining me, as ever, is Mr. RJ O'Connell. How was Watkins Glen, good man?
Hot. Sunday. First day of a half a week heat wave up in the northeastern United States. Watkins Glen was a very weird race. Go check the highlights. If you want to see all 6 hours of it, 3 of which were spent behind the safety car, be my guest. Go right ahead. There's probably little details that you missed here and there. Otherwise, just catch the 40-minute highlight package. You'll get it all in one take.
Yeah, that's probably for the best. Yeah, Watkins Glen, hot as shit, briefly damp as shit, but mostly under a safety car. Oh, yeah, and in the end, Caddy won. What you know, the Acura won, my bad.
No, they didn't, no. They explicitly did not win.
Acura got Cadillac got a 2.35 out of things, which is great compared to where they started the season, but True. They probably could have 1, 2, 3 this.
Well, I mean, speaking from underneath the moon and from the Porsche contingent, hi, it's Cam Buckley. However good or bad a week you're having, you're probably having a better one than Pecco Bagania's title campaign right now.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah, the Italian GP happened. I missed that because I was too busy at work. So how'd it go?
Ha ha ha, ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha. You thought it'd be different this time.
Until it very suddenly wasn't. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but let's just say, from what I've been told about how the media center went down after that race, the quote I was told by an anonymous source was, and I quote, "You could feel the air get sucked out of the building."
Yeah. And thankfully for all of us, then one member of the media pumped all that hot air back in.
More on that later. Because naturally I want to talk about that. So sometimes there is a downside to being way too massively online. And for once, I'm not talking about me.
Sometimes? Sometimes there's a downside.
Sometimes. We'll talk about that in a bit. Places you can find us in the meantime, we're on youtube.com/motorsport101. We're on facebook.com/motorsport101. We're on Twitter at motorsport_101. If you want to follow us on Blue Sky, you can personally at cbuckley917, at Dre Harrison, and at RJ O'Connell. .bsky.social. You can follow us on Instagram at Motorsport101pod. You can follow us on TikTok at M101_podcast. Just search Motorsport 101. You'll find it on there either way. You can check us out there for highlights of the show. And if you really like us, you can back us financially on Patreon, patreon.com/motorsport101. $5 gets you early access to all of our content. You can upgrade to the $10 tier. You can listen to these episodes live as they are being recorded, as Jason and Ghost Raptor are doing so right now as we speak. I hope you're enjoying the shows, and thank you as ever for the continued support. Don't forget, if you're a brand new backer, you can get a 30% discount if you back us either as a free member and want to upgrade, or if you want to pay for an entire year up front, you get 30% off the top. It's basically 12 months for the price of 9. Think of the deals, people. Think of the deals. But of course, thank you very much if you continue to support us on Patreon. We are very grateful for that. You can check all the details on that and more on our website, motorsport101.com. Check out the
12
blogs.
months for the price of 9. That feels like we're giving you all what little shrinking amount of racing off-season there is for free.
Exactly. You pay for the off-season break, and then you get nothing during it. It's a great bargain, quite frankly. Although, to be fair, is a Formula One off-season even really 3 months anymore?
Barely.
Not
Barely.
really. Not really.
It ain't looking like that in a lot of motorsports, I'm going to tell you.
No kidding. Right, without further ado, let's not play some music here. Instead, let's talk about the big breaking story of the last 3 days. Monday morning, we got the announcement, and I'm not going to lie to you, apparently it had been coming for a good week, just they were waiting for the final confirmation. Let's just say there were more and more Liberty bigwigs shoving their way through the doors at MotoGP events, acting as if they'd already owned the joint. Well, now they do, because the European Commission finally on Monday morning gave the green light for Liberty Media to complete its majority purchase of MotoGP. They are buying 84% of Dorna Sports, the commercial rights holders for MotoGP, for a cool $4.2 billion. They've already made a couple of announcements that Chase Carey, remember him and his moustache?
Yeah.
He will now be sitting on MotoGP's board of directors alongside Sean Bratches. He was F1's former CEO and director. They are now going to be sitting on MotoGP's big board to help as part of the move in the transitional process. Big deal. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit as well, because Chase, well, if you're an F1 fan, you'll probably be quite familiar that when Bernie Eccleston finally sold his stake in Formula One's commercial rights, he immediately moved over. The world's most famous moustache became a thing. That's certainly what was happening. I mean, we've kind of known that this is going to be happening for a good year now, because I remember it was Austin 2024 when this was first really announced. But we've had to go through transitional periods, investigations by the European Commission. That took 7 months to finally settle. There was talks that there might be a monopoly, and the marginal risk of that being a thing. The European Commission had a look at the market and was like, well, no, actually, all these countries have pretty flexible TV markets, so no, we don't think it'll be a majority or a monopoly stake, actually. You're good to go. The question I pose to you, gentlemen, is what does Liberty need to bring to MotoGP going forward? Where are the shortcomings? What do you want to see the sport do with this newfound ownership?
First of all, the $4.2 billion. God, that's like trying to cater a team meeting with 5 guys.
Oh, hi-oh.
Damn.
Hi-oh.
It's like, no, large Cajun fries. No, more at the bottom of the bag. Oh, I mean, that is a serious chunk of change to be throwing around. And if they're willing to spend that on investing in the series and actually getting that ownership stake, what they've proven in their time owning Formula One is that they are willing to throw big marketing dollars around to try and shape the image of the sport into one they see fit. And if there is one thing that you would really want MotoGP to invest in, go all out on the marketing. They're compared to Formula One, and I know there's a lot of MotoGP fans who will smell blood at me even saying that, but There are small fish in a big pond, generally speaking, in terms of global motorsport on television, in the mainstream. Liberty now has a whole lot of cash to play with MotoGP to try and make it more mainstream in the eyes of the public.
I mean, $4.2 billion, that'll buy you 40% of a Los Angeles Lakers.
Don't even fucking...
Can I just say how pissed I am that a lone rogue actor somewhere in my town for Comcast decided that I wasn't going to get to talk about that on a show last week? Because I was trying to troubleshoot, for those who don't know, a reason why I left early during the Le Mans episode last week. My router just legitimately grenaded during the podcast.
It happens.
Puff of smoke, dead stick, no response. It was great. Yeah, congratulations to Robert Kubica, Yaffe, and Phil Hansen. To the rest of the Ferrari fans out there, y'all know what you're doing. Y'all know what I'm about.
No.
Yeah, it is. That's. I can't fucking believe Jeannie Buss sold the Lakers.
Okay, but bringing it back here.
Bring back to MotoGP.
I agree with you on that point. I still feel a little uneasy about this being not deemed a monopoly.
Same.
And I get it. I get it. This is at least it's motorcycle racing's top echelon. We're not trying to integrate every level of single-seater racing into the same umbrella.
No.
That almost happened with IndyCar, of course.
Yeah.
And for better and for worse, that didn't happen, given the way Roger has run the sport, / failed to run the sport. But let us not forget, a long time ago, this exact same situation unfolded, and Bernie Ecclestone sold MotoGP to make sure he could own F1.
Yeah, back in 2006, when Bridgepoint ended up buying MotoGP as Dorna's somewhat parent company, because that same European Commission back in 2006 thought that no, you're going to have a monopoly on European TV markets if you own both series. Apparently, shit changed 20 years later. Who knew?
Yeah, that's right. The rise of Euroscepticism and ultra far right politics all across Europe and in other parts of the Western world. And, antitrust legislation doesn't mean shit in society.
That's probably the actual reason why this went through, is that antitrust doesn't mean shit anymore.
No, probably not.
Microsoft and ActiBliz can all be part of the same company. It's awesome.
That increases Xbox sales, right?
Cam, do you want to tell them the good news?
No. It did not, in fact, increase Xbox sales.
The sport does need more eyeballs on it, though, outside of its core audience. And, Dre, as you teed it up, it's very easy to look at what Formula One has become under Liberty Media. Even people within Formula One feel alienated of how it's become, because it isn't familiar to them, and MotoGP are worried that that's going to happen to them. But I look at Formula One nowadays like it is by no means perfect, but it feels a lot more fresh and revitalized than it did like during the last years of the Ecclestone regime. I mean, we've talked about it before. They had no social media presence outside the teams competing in it themselves, because that just wasn't a thing they wanted to deal with.
Well, Bernie Ecclestone was in the media. When he was in the social media, what little they had going, well, why would I advertise to someone who can't afford a Rolex? Paraphrasing.
Yeah.
Why would I want to advertise the sport to anyone less than the richest assholes I know? And to that effect, really MotoGP's already been eating at F1's table, though.
It has.
They, at Formula One, pumped the brakes on the sprint. We started with 3, and then we went to 6, and they've been kind of conservative with it. MotoGP's fuck it, whole calendar.
Yeah, and they openly just admitted we copied F1. Like I mentioned, I did a TikTok / Instagram reel talking about this back on Monday when the news broke. Dorna's been eating off Formula One's plate for some time. They've already had a working social media relationship where it's like, we'll acknowledge each other, we'll do collabs every once in a while, we'll acknowledge like Valentino Rossi's retirement and vice versa when something big happens in Formula One. MotoGP praised Lewis Hamilton when he got his 100th F1 win, for example. That was neat. Friends, social friends. But
F1 sponsorship on the Pramac bikes, but it's been toes in the water.
Yeah, exactly. This is obviously now a working relationship under the same umbrella. And look, MotoGP fans have been crying foul about this for some time. And to a degree, I get it. Change scares people for the most part. I can see why people would be nervous or have trepidation towards the idea of new ownership at MotoGP, because Dorna Sports is like all that a lot of MotoGP fans have ever known about this sport and the way it gets down. Formula One is objectively in a far better place than it was in 2016 when Liberty Media bought it. There is no argument you can make against that at this point. If you're the sort of person that doesn't like that, for some reason the idea of new fans scares you. Now,
yeah,
let us not forget.
You only have to talk to an old head Formula One fan threatened by the presence of young women getting into the sport.
Yes, how dare these young women advertise turbocharged engines rather than screaming V10s? No, let us not forget, in 2016, Formula One let Haas in because they were absolutely down atrocious for a new team. They were begging anyone who would join to join. And we're only really getting Cadillac now coming in next year because we fired Michael Andretti into the sun and caved to F1's wishes and got a sponsor and got an OEM and got this, that, and the other. And they still tried to move the goalposts because F1 financially and image-wise just in a better place in the grand scheme of things.
They are absolutely worth a lot more now than the $6 billion that Liberty paid for it at the end of 2016. Like, they got a huge shot in the arm, and like, I cannot stress the impact that Drive to Survive had for Formula One, because every major global sport has copied that formula when it comes to trying to expand into documentary-based media.
Including who?
Including MotoGP, who threw the dice at it not once but twice, because people forgot about MotoGP Unlimited on Amazon Prime being such a disaster launch-wise that people stopped caring about it. And now
how dare these riders speak in their native language that's not English?
Yeah, and only now have they got There Will Be Only One, which is a very good series and actually more accessible because it's on YouTube for free rather than having to pay for a Netflix subscription, but it doesn't pull anywhere near the same kind of numbers. But you look at shit like Full Swing in golf, Breakpoint in tennis, horse racing had its own version I saw come out earlier this year. The NFL's done multiple versions of like quarterback and receiver, etc. Like Tour de France has had 3 seasons of Unchained in response. The Six Nations in rugby had its own version. Cricket of the Australian team had its own version of this. Drive to Survive
it kicked off its own micro industry.
It did. And Box to Box Productions made half of the shows I've just mentioned. They made bank off the back of DTS's popularity. They were able to genuinely crack mainstream celebrity culture by getting people to make... Well, what DTS did more than anything else was it turned the drivers into stars.
Uh-huh.
It made people care about the drivers beyond just what they were doing in their race cars. Lewis Hamilton is now one of the most recognizable athletes on Earth as a direct result of the DTS bump that he got. Daniel Ricciardo became an overnight celebrity. Lando Norris has got a huge following on social media with younger audiences now because of DTS and what it did. It got a whole new generation of fans to care about its product. MotoGP might not like its audience or might like what Formula One has done with its audience to make it younger, more feminine, to attract to more members of the cultural zeitgeist. MotoGP would kill for 10% of that bump right now.
I'd say a huge quantity of people within F1 don't like it, but you can't argue with the results.
Right. Like,
And that includes us.
Formula One is now probably worth the better part of 20 billion now. Forbes valued it at 17 last year. So if by that logic and by that valuation, and given allegedly Saudi Arabia put an offer together of 20 billion 2 years ago, according to Bloomberg, if that's the case, Liberty Media tripled their money in 6 years, which is just crazy.
Don't mention the $20 billion bid, by the way.
Yeah, don't mention it, otherwise F1 will send a strongly worded letter to your PO box in regards to that.
Los Angeles Lakers.
And yeah, and as Cam quite rightly made the point in their script about this, the situation and where they're at right now is, if nothing else, Formula One is proving it is prepared to move money in order to get people to care. Like, say what you will about Vegas, that was the sport writing a check for $500 million of its own money to have its own race in Vegas, and thought, fuck it, we'll promote it ourselves. And generally speaking, it's gone down well. But I know people want to joke about, oh, well, MotoGP is going to have 3 races in America now. It did have 3 races in America less than 10 years ago.
I say, American MotoGP fans are fucking starving over here.
And they've got a good race. They've got a good race on the calendar.
We had 3 good races.
MotoGP in America is a shadow of what it once was.
Yeah,
the ladder here is dead. The development path is dead. There ain't no Nicky Hayden coming down up the development ladder anymore because there is no ladder.
Right. And that is a huge, potentially untapped market, or certainly retapped market that Liberty can tap into. If you can get America back on base, that would be huge for MotoGP. Mm-hmm. They need to get American interest back in this sport again, even if it hasn't got an American rider on the grid. I know Joe Roberts is the nearest we have to that, but just to get people to care again would be huge. You know, MotoGP needs more eyeballs on it. It has not done a good enough job to promote itself in the last decade or so. It's only just starting to recover from life after Valentino Rossi when he retired 4 years ago. Only now did Mugello get back to its record-breaking attendance that it had in the Rossi days. It needs help. It needs help tapping into new markets. It needs help going to places that aren't just the Iberian Peninsula, because let's not forget, nearly a quarter of this calendar is now in either Spain or Portugal. We can do better than that. F1 can get it into new markets and new sponsors, because I said before, MotoGP is only good at attracting 3 types of sponsors: oil companies, mechanical parts, and cryptocurrencies. Maybe energy drinks on the side as well if you really want to go down that road. And they may not even really fully exist, depending on who you ask.
We do not need to go back in time for a rich energy MotoGP team.
No, we could go forward in time to a time of virtual energy. Shout out to my friends at Magnus Racing who ran that.
Exactly.
Oh, God.
The sport needs a lot of help. I mean, me personally, my magnum opus for MotoGP would be make the riders feel like stars. Get attendance up at the flagging venues like Silverstone and reinvest in the series. You need a new revenue model. You need to be giving these teams a bigger slice of the pie. Mm-hmm. Because one thing that will help the sport market itself is if more teams can pick up the slack and do it for them. The amount of times I've heard in the paddock about how entire MotoGP teams have one person for their entire social media is a joke.
It's all the minnows. You know, you've got your factory teams who have the typical crew. I mean, let's not forget, despite where they are in this championship at Gresini, but Gresini is a small team. And Gresini only really have the racing team and then the bare minimum otherwise. And that's the same with the other privateers out here on the grid.
They're taking over my timeline with shots of gloved hands on bare bottoms, hands on hips.
Apparently that is Alex Marquez's real loss.
Real.
But yeah, like this like entire smaller teams only have one person to be able to handle their entire social media. Don't ask me how I know this. You cannot run an entire team social media package off one person. It's not sustainable. And the thing is, these teams cannot afford to be paying $50,000 a year to hire, an extra person to be able to do it, because these teams are living hand to mouth. A lot of them are taking pay riders in order to actually be able to generate the funding to run their team over a full season. You think they can afford a full social media team on top of that? No. The whole sport needs a better
they're
revenue
the
share
privateers.
model.
Yeah, they're racing privateers in the most pure sense of the word. Why do you think Premac took effectively pay bikes? They have free bikes. They have free support from Yamaha. And they gave up the best bike in the sport to get that, because otherwise, and that is one of the more sustainable teams on the grid with Premac, because they are an entity beyond just the racing team. It just financially made too much sense to pivot to Yamaha and become effectively a secondary works team.
Yeah, you need to reset the entire. You need a new Concord agreement. You need an entirely new revenue sharing model so that the teams get a bigger slice of the pie. Make the pie bigger, and you'll be able to feed more mouths. You feed more mouths, the teams will be able to pick up more of the slack, and they'll be able to promote and market themselves better. Everybody
self-sustaining.
You need to justify putting the sport behind so many paywalls and so many markets somehow.
Get a better video pass too while you're at it, because paying because paying €200 for a glorified Flash player is a joke.
Yeah, like the less said about what Dorna has done up to this point to try and take some of that Liberty F1 media package magic, the less said, the better.
Yeah.
Because it's more money and it is a quantifiably worse product in every way, even if the actual racing product oftentimes isn't. For me, one of the biggest things that I want to see, if you're going to do a new Concord agreement, you got to clamp down on the teams. And we're going to be doing that a little bit under the new technical regulations as well. But there has to be a more equal power split between the manufacturers involved and the sport trying to regulate it. And I think it objectively is a good thing bringing in Liberty to help do that, because they have had to do so in Formula One. However successful the set of regulations was with F1 with trying to improve the racing, at least for the first 2 years, it did work. And then things went out of control. But in regards to stuff like what happened with the ride height devices and the aero explosion that we've seen, I think we need to see a more even split of power regulating the sport to make sure that certain technical battles don't go runaway like they have, because this race, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, was good for a few laps, and then it very suddenly wasn't.
Correct. And I'm all for that. And F1, again, has generally done a pretty good job of basically making it feel like the inmates don't run the asylum anymore, at least to a smaller degree. That pretty much puts a neat little bow on everything. I mean, that's what I would like to see. I would like to see a more sustained marketing push. I would like to see a financial model that makes more sense for the teams involved. And I fully agree with Cam. I would like to see a better balance of power between the manufacturers and the governing body of the sport and the regulations and the way they're being set right now. Because right now, MotoGP feels like the teams run the asylum, and I don't think that's a healthy way to run a motorsport series in the long run. You tick all three of those boxes, I think you'll be in a much better place in 5 years' time. Of course, you've got to give Liberty time. This is not going to be an overnight fix by any stretch of the imagination. We've got a big new regulation change coming up in a year and a half's time that need to prepare for. I've always said you should fire quickly and hire slowly. This is going to take time, but I'm optimistic, given that Liberty has, in my opinion, generally done a pretty good job with Formula One so far in the 8 years it's been owning the series. And I think F1 is definitely in the best place it's been in decades, quite frankly, overall. So let's see what they can do with MotoGP, because if there's one thing we will say, the product is not the problem. And I think 2027 even the bad shit with MotoGP is still better than most motorsport series do on a week-to-week basis. And I'm optimistic that the 2027 regulation change will address some of those issues. You don't need to promote the on-track product itself. Once people get into it, I think they become fans in the long term. But I think they need to get people through the door first. And that's the biggest problem that MotoGP has, in my opinion, going forward.
Yep. Tune into our next episode where we rehash these same talking points about a different series. But first, the Italian Motorcycle Grand Prix. I just want to... My takeaway from the MotoGP before Dre breaks it down is a excerpt from the latest TheRace.com rider rankings. Marc Marquez qualified first, sprint first, Grand Prix first. See you in 2026.
And that is the race review. Places you can find us real quick.
Yeah. It was a huge, destructive race for Marc Marquez. He had to work for it early on with Alex Marquez and Pecco Bagania in the leading group, the real big three. But after Marc hit the front on lap 8, he stretched his lead out to 2 seconds and didn't look back. Alex could only loosely fall him in second. Bagnia's rear tire collapsed, dropped him the fourth on the penultimate lap to Fabio Di Giannantonio on the podium. And with that, Marc Marquez extends his championship lead to 40 points with a 110-point advantage over teammate Pecco.
Yeah, see you in 2026. I'm out.
Yeah, it's...
Are we done here?
It feels like
it's kind of funny because I had this realization this morning. I talked to Dre a little bit about it a couple hours before we started recording. The script is very much flipped regarding what tracks you would think each one would dominate on this year, because the traditional Marc Marquez many home rounds didn't really play out up to this point this year. Coda was dominating, threw it away with a dumb mistake over a curb, and then Jerez just dumped the bike while just pushing too hard. Conversely, at the tracks where you would have expected Pecco to dominate, Marc Marquez is stuffing this dude in a locker. He has taken his lunch money.
Remember this is Pecco Bagania during his days and during his Pramac days, we were all gushing like, man, just wait till you see what he does on a full factory bike. He got a couple championships, which is good. But man, Marc Marquez is just taking it to him.
Pecco Bagania, why are you the way that you are? Rings ever truer.
I mean, everything we've said about Marc Marquez turned out to be true in this move. This is 2014 Marc Marquez. How do I know this? Because for the second time this season, Marc has won at a race. He has not done so since 2014. Qatar was one. This is now the second. Marc even admitted he himself was surprised at how quick he was over the course of this weekend, because Mugello, on paper, does not suit Marc's riding style. He loves anti-clockwise tracks. He loves point and squirt, left-handers, long left-handers, ideally. That's the sort of track that Marc likes. Mugello is the complete opposite to that. It is fast. It is flowing. It has a lack of places where Marc can make the time up. And it's clockwise. There's only really the final corner where Marc can really make time on people in his traditional way. And Marc beat the field from pillar to post.
Yep. Fire and death from beyond the arc. Stephen Curry against the Oklahoma City Thunder about a decade ago. This is ridiculous.
To the Thunder on their NBA Finals success. Congrats on the championship. Commiserations to Seattle basketball fans who probably feel like this should have been theirs.
Yeah, I don't know what there is left to say this year, but we are so, every time we've said, oh, Pecco really needs to win here or this title is done, Marc blows him away. He blew him away in Qatar. He blew him away even worse here, and I tell you, it was not for Pecco's lack of trying, both in the sprint, for once, and on race day. He threw the house at Marc, and it simply didn't matter.
Yeah, like, it's actually quite deliberate how this race played out once you get it, once you scratch at their riding styles. Marc Marquez has figured out how to ride this GP25 quickly. He will deliberately take it easy the first 5, 6, 7 laps where he can, let a little bit of that rear grip go away so he can start to drift into corners a little bit. He can slide the bike around a little bit while protecting his front tire. And in the back half, when he's able to start sliding it around a little bit more, and that plays up to his strengths a little bit more, and he's able to just use that front and hammer it into the ground in the second half of races, he's untouchable.
He's figured out how to ride a modern Desmo Sedici like his classic Honda.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
He's figured it out.
This bike could not be further, philosophically from the short, twitchy, the bike that you would just throw into corners with reckless abandon. It could not be further from that. And he's figured out how to get the front tire to respond that way without just dumping the bike, because we know the GP25 has a little bit of a numb front end. It has a little bit of an issue at the very edge of grip where it will lull you into too much of a sense of security and it will put you down. And it just doesn't matter.
Meanwhile, Pecco Bagania at the other end was throwing the house at the Marquez brothers, trying to get to the front of the queue, but he was burning up his front tire in doing so. And then when his front tire grip goes, his rear tire, he can't slide the bike like Marc Marquez can. That's not Pecco's riding style. He's a very sensitive front end rider. So when his front end is gone and his rear is now starting to slide, Pecco can't catch them. He can't afford to slide a bike around anymore. So that's what led to his rear grip falling apart. And that's why from the course of the start of the race, he went from doing 147s to 149s to the point where he fell off the podium and DJ Antonio beat him straight up. This was not supposed to happen. Pecco Bagania has won the last 5 races at Mugello. The last 5, including the last 2 sprints.
Last year on that glorious blue motorcycle. Sorry, it's extremely NSFW. He destroyed this field last year on that bike.
This was Pecco's ace in the hole. This is one of his 2 or 3 strongest rounds. The next one's coming up next at the Aston TT this weekend. But for him to come here and to be utterly destroyed like that, it just sucked the air out of the media center. It sucked the air out of the feelings of this race. And it was pretty much like the final, basically, confirmation that Marc Marquez is not going to be beaten this year. Because if he's winning at Mugello, cancel Christmas. It's over.
I think, if anything, it's a little bit worse than that, Dre, because it's like Pecco dropped all restraint with this race. He stopped overthinking. He just rode on instinct and speed, and all it got him was shot tires.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you might be able to outthink Marc. You might be able to outrace him bike to bike. But there is no substitute for raw, punishing speed. And at the end of the day, Marc seems to be able to just have 2 or 3 tenths in his back pocket over whoever is willing to ask. And when he can use that, there's just... You might get ahead of him, you might fend him off, but it's just, there's an inevitability to it that it doesn't feel like there has been with any rider in the sport since Marc himself in 2019. When almost every race, no matter how good Fabio Quartararo was in 2019, it boiled down to, so when's Marc going to pass him? And he always did.
This is 2014 Marc. This is Marc at the peak of his powers when he was 21 all over again, where he can just brute force his way to the front and win on sheer breakneck pace. And he's won 8 out of 9 sprints. He's won 5 out of 9 Grand Prix. He's had 5 perfect weekends this year already. Alex Marquez can be very grateful the gap's only 40, quite frankly, because he's chucked 50 points away himself out of just learning to get to this point. And it feels like this is Marc Marquez discovering autonomous ultra instinct, essentially.
What Beer is saying, what a guy in the distance.
Oh, yeah.
That's the thing. That 110 point gap to Pecco It should really be more like 150 to 160. After 9 races, 9 weekends that we have sprints too. He is single-handedly ruining this man's legacy brick by smoldering brick.
Yeah. It just goes to show you that the 2 world shot titles that Bagnaia won, part of the reason why he won them was because Marc was on a bike that wasn't competitive. It's that simple. Or injured. Or both, quite frankly.
Most of the time, both.
Most of the time it was both. I mean, speaking of...
RJ.
Yeah.
RJ, you've been chopping at the bit for a second.
I've been chopping at the bit to lob this grenade down the hallway because you forget that Pecco Bagania is 3rd in the standings, so that logically means that somebody is between Marc and Pecco, and it's little brother Alex.
Yeah, because Pecco hasn't even been the 2nd best Ducati rider this year.
Nope, not even close.
So are we to expect that Alex Marquez isn't going to give his older brother any sort of fight in this championship?
Oh, shut up, Van Man.
Bang! Oh, what a shot from O'Connell. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've slowly had to... I feel like this is the part where I've got to take over for a couple of minutes here, so bear with me for just a moment.
Pull up the deck chairs. RJ, you want a cold one?
Yeah, this is...
Here's a Diet Pilk.
Yeah, this is not ideal. So for full context, I've had to flirt my way back onto Twitter a little bit because I'm a part-time social...
Doctors call it time of death.
Yeah, I've had to flirt my way back onto Twitter because of part of my job is being a part-time social media admin, alongside my day job of editing a boatload of podcasts. And during that time, I saw a tweet in the immediate aftermath of the race, ironically, from someone who works for them, and that was everybody's favorite van-owning journalist, Simon Patterson. And he put out a tweet that said, you might as well give Marc Marquez the trophy now because his brother is the only person within 100 points of him, and the fact that he's not racing Marc hard. And I indirectly said, and I quote, certain prolific figures in bike racing should know better than to imply that Alex Marquez is softballing his teammate. And I said it was nasty work. That tweet got picked up by quite a few people on Twitter in bike racing circles. It got shared and retweeted around, eventually to the point where Simon himself said, at least I'm brave enough to put my opinions out there to people's faces. To which I quote retweeted him and said, I think it was something along the lines of, I'd rather be rattled by something that's real rather than something that isn't. And he blocked me after that. And this is a man who used to be my friend. So, it's whatever. I don't take this shit personally. I'm 32. Life is too goddamn short.
So, someone in this beef is.
To be wound up by the opinions of people that take a lot of pride in being opinionated, but then blocks you and gets defensive the moment you disagree with them. I think that's not a healthy way of being on social media. And look, I will say publicly on the record, I have huge respect for Simon as a reporter and as a journalist. He's very good at his job, and he's generally had his heart in the right place. He's raised thousands of pounds for charitable efforts like the relief effort in Ukraine. He gets a huge pat on the back from me for that. That is objectively a great thing he has done. And generally speaking, he errs on the right side of history, and his heart is in the right place. However, he is very thin-skinned, and I've got no problem saying that on the record, that I think what you're implying when you're in that position as a journalist is very dangerous, especially when it involves a Marquez brother. Because his smoking gun as to why he thinks Alex Marquez is not racing Marc hard enough was Aragon 2024 last year, when Bagnaia and Marquez hit each other and both crashed out of that race. His argument was Alex raced Pecco too hard back then, but he's not doing the same to Marc. My argument against that is Alex Marquez wasn't competing for a championship last year. The worst he had to lose was a podium finish. You're also ignoring the fact that Pecco Bagania took an hellacious amount of risk in trying to pass Alex around the outside of that chicane. That was always going to be risky. Alex hasn't got a reason to let his foot off the throttle, quite frankly. He's got, well, hand, I should say, depends on how you operate your bikes these days. Some do, others. But you get my gist.
Yeah, it's. I'd still maintain I thought that crash was fairly 50-50. It was two dumb bitches going exactly on the entry of a corner. Look, if you're going to be throwing around hand grenades on social media to that extent, you have to be prepared for the fallout of it. This is what I've told people. You cannot make your online persona that of a hot take merchant and then be shocked when the hornet's nest that you just kicked comes to sting you.
There is in my...
And this is not just the case with Simon. This is the case with tons of people in this racing community who just post for clout and inflammatory BS and then are shocked when that comes back after them. And as the younger brother in my family, because my older brother Jared, you think the younger brother isn't trying everything in his power to beat the older?
Really?
Do you know why I got so good at Mario Kart? Do you people out there know why I got so good at Mario Kart 64? Because I wanted to wipe every single one of my brother's time trial times off of the save file.
How many times have we seen an opportunity where this can happen at this level of motorsport? Because the closest thing I can think of is when Ralph was at a top team, but Michael was at the ultimate
of team, the ultimate Death Star of motorsport history, the most hated motherfuckers on earth in early 2000s Scuderia.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Not many.
Look, here's what I'll say. I don't think there is any tangible evidence that Alex Marquez is softballing his older brother. I personally think, and I said this on Twitter, and I will say it again here, I think it's a far more plausible argument that you can make that Mark is just 2 tenths quicker than his brother, and he has been at pretty much every major flashpoint so far this season. Not to mention, Alex Marquez is having an incredible MotoGP season right now. Like, he is having a career-defining season right now. He would be leading this championship at a canter if it wasn't for what his brother is doing right now. He has gone from a fringe top 10 rider who was beefing with DJ Antonio, Bezzecchi, Morbidelli, and the other dudes on Ducatis to being the second best bike rider in the world, and it's not even close. This man right now has got a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to compete for a championship. And if you watch the first 7 laps of that race, and your first thought was, I think Alex is softballing Mark, I genuinely don't think you're enjoying this sport anymore. I recommend taking up cricket, because I'm not sure MotoGP is a sport for you anymore, because that was the best racing we've had so far this season. Alex Marquez was prepared to take it 3 wide on many occasions and led multiple laps of this race, trying to pull away from the 2 factory Ducatis, one of which was making all sorts of aggressive moves and shapes into corners to try and get to the front of the queue. If you watched that and you genuinely thought that Alex was lowballing his brother, you're either blind or ignorant. There is no evidence that Alex is softballing his brother. Alex is having a generational season right now. The only reason he's not leading this championship by 100 points is because We are seeing arguably the greatest of all time wring the neck of arguably the fastest MotoGP bike we've ever seen, week in and week out. It is not because Alex is on a miraculously quicker bike in secret and he's able to just dive bomb the shit out of his brother. And even if he could, even if he wanted to, arguably, I'd be more concerned if he wanted to take that kind of risk against his own flesh and blood. But there's no evidence of it. There's nothing to suggest this. It's bullshit.
And the thing that's been working for Alex, and the thing that is kind of his only ace in the hole here, is that he's been more consistent than Marc, because Marc has dumped the bike from the lead once, and from a potential win a second time. The blueprint of an Alex Marquez title push is one of hope that Marc makes a mistake. Because if it comes down to 1v1 combat, Marc has got 2 or 3 tenths on him.
Which we've seen. We saw it in Thailand. We saw it in Argentina. We saw it at Aragon. Every time Marc has hit the front, he's able to apply his pace, race to his strategy. He's got the formula down now, and Alex can't beat him. We've seen it so many times this season already, and that's no disrespect to Alex, but it's not because Alex is letting him do this. It's because Marc is just that good. You cannot gas up Marc Marquez as potentially the greatest of all time and say you want him to win this championship to complete sport's arguably greatest comeback since Niki Lauda, while at the same time say he's not good enough to the point where Alex Marquez is letting him win these. It's bullshit.
These are incompatible.
You're better than that.
I'm not so sure that person is. And that's what's frustrating, because they really should be.
It's disappointing. It's disappointing, and honestly,
have we not had enough? Have we as a collective, like, community, not had enough of trying to spin conspiracies around the Marquez brothers?
It's been 10 years of this now. 10 years. We saw Davide Tardozzi screaming to the Tifosi in the stands. He's red.
He's red. We're wearing red. Shush.
People still...
I love that man, by the way.
Yeah.
That man is completely fucking unhinged, and he is my favorite team manager in the sport.
It's been 10 years since Valentino Rossi and the kick. 10 years nearly. Yeah. And we're still holding beef about this. 10 years, and we all know what side of the fence is the one spinning up the bullshit in regards to this. It's the Rossi camp, because Valentino himself can't let this go, and if Valentino can't let it go, his fans will do the same. And it's just... why don't we just want to move on? Why do we still want to hold this grudge? Are you guys? Are people insecure? Or are they that upset that Marc Marquez is coming for all of Valley's records now? Is that it? Is it an ego thing?
It is. I think it is literally that. And you know what? First off, I love that Marc put his hand to his helmet going, I can't hear you, to all the boos after he was booed relentlessly all weekend.
That's the ironic part of all this. Yeah. Booing Marquez makes him faster.
Yeah.
It motivates.
I can't hear you. I love that. But also, like, at the end of the day, Marc Marquez is as genuine a rider as I can think of out there, because he wears the bastard tag on his chest. He doesn't care. He wants to he races everyone hard. He races everyone like it's the last corner of the last lap. He has never been apologetic about that fact.
He bumped Jorge Lorenzo off his own corner in his third ever start. He accidentally but very accurately severed Danny Pedrosa's traction control cord the first time he raced at Aragon. He's had no problem getting into dogfights with Andrea Dovizioso or Valentino Rossi, even replicating Rossi's own moves to do it. Marc Marquez doesn't give a fuck who you are. He will race you hard because that's who Marc is. That's who Marc was, and that's what Marc has always been. He's never shown evidence otherwise. This is the first year we've ever seen Alex Marquez in a title contending position. Certainly at the highest level. And his Moto 3 and Moto 2 title wins were not plagued with toxicity. They were both won clean as a whistle. It's nonsense. The entire narrative in regards to this is nonsense, and it spins up the worst that this community can provide. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. I think
Move on.
I think we're bored. We appreciate that Marc is doing so well this year. We always knew that talent was still in him, but it's getting boring, and we just want to see the brothers crash into each other just for our entertainment. I think this is what it comes down to.
Yeah, they want the brothers to beef, and they're not going to, because they're brothers, they close, and they love each other. They celebrate together.
Yeah, any less professionalism, and Alex and Marc would have walked up to the stand dancing.
Oh, yeah.
Again. But even beyond that, like, Alex cannot afford a crash in that scenario, because if he comes off worse from it, it's done. It's more done than it already is.
Oh, yeah. The reason why Marc's got that 40-point lead now is because Alex threw it down the road at Le Mans. You know, it's as simple as that. It wouldn't be a 40-point game if it wasn't for that. But that was 20 points he gifted Marc for free. And that 20 hurts a lot more than the 50 Marc has thrown away, because we know Marc will close that gap because of how quick he is on a conventional weekend. He's been chipping away at this week on week. And Alex has done, like I said, he's done a sensational job of mitigating that damage. But it's only going to rack up week on week, and it's just going to just drift further and further and further away as the weeks go by. Like, Marc is winning this via death of 1,000 cuts, and he's waiting for Alex to make that mistake, which he will, because he's human. Alex will make that mistake. He's going to. It's inevitable. And when he does, that's when Marc will really twist the knife in this title feud. And, you know, we've talked about that. We've talked about Pecco Bagania to a degree as well. But just before we get out of here as well, we've got to talk a little bit about Frankie Morbidelli, because he absolutely rode through Maverick Vinales. Holy shit.
Frankie says relax as he pulls out a gun and shoots you in the knee.
Oh, yeah.
That was some of the worst racecraft I've seen from Frankie. And I love me some Frankie Morbidelli.
Me too.
But he is kind of making a name for himself in the wrong way by getting into on-track incidents and blocking penalties. And I didn't see you there, and I rode through you, and the list continues.
Hammer Buckley, are you saying that Franco Morbidelli, very likable personality within the MotoGP paddock, has a tendency to get into careless accidents and rub people the wrong? Is this guy just Ross Chastain on two wheels and without the melons?
And with far less cartilage in his knees. Kind of feels that way.
I mean, the way I see it, not only was that egregious bike racing, he only got a long lap penalty for that. And I feel like when it's that egregious and you're just riding through somebody, basically getting the equivalent of a 2 to 3 second time penalty is not a fair punishment when you've taken somebody out of a race. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, because this one was so on the nose. You can punish the incident, you can punish the outcome. It really should be the same. It was a stupid move, and it ended stupidly.
Ride-through penalty. In my humble opinion, that needs to be a ride-through penalty.
Only the second...
I would have been comfortable with that.
Fun fact, only the second most egregious punishment that didn't fit the grime in the last weekend of motorsports.
Oh, a word?
What's up, Mirko? Mirko, DTM champion, Lamborghini ace. Ran through 9 red lights.
9 red flags and got a suspended ban. Well, I don't care who's justifying it to me that wasn't a ban for the race. Oh my God. Can you imagine if Max Verstappen went through 9 red flags at an F1 weekend? He would get 2 race bans.
2, not 3, not 4, etc.
Oh, quiet down, LeBron.
MotoGP will be back this weekend with the Assen TT, one of the headline rounds on the calendar.
Cathedral of Speed.
The Cathedral of Speed will be back on the calendar this weekend. And of course, we'll be back next week to review all of that action. Next up on our billing, IndyCar at Road America and the second count of that damn Spaniard. More soon. Until then, I've been Dre Harrison. They've been Cameron Buckley and RJ O'Connell. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you guys next time. Sayonara.
Later, y'all.
And Motorsport 101 Athlete of the Year is going to boil down to one big case of that damn Spaniard, isn't it?
Probably.